Okay, guys, so welcome back. This is Comp 1008, so Intro to OOPS using Java, Lesson 2, Part 1, right? So Lesson 1 is available on YouTube. Just look it up under the Thursday section. Same, Anju Chawla, Comp 1008. Thursday is where you will find it. So we had started doing an example. We were talking about what object-oriented programming is all about, and as I said, it's basically plain programming but packaged in a certain way. So since human beings kind of see everything as data and methods together, so how I look and what can I do, this kind of is together, right? So anything that I say to you, you kind of always put it together. As soon as I say car, you can see the car, you can say, oh, this is the make, this is the model, and then you can say, oh, car, oh, I use it to drive around, I can go places, I can turn right, left, and so on. Since human beings think that way, therefore this object oriented programming came into existence, so that programmers could create a class definition, and the class definition has instance variables that kind of say, how do I look? They represent the class, right? And the methods in the class say, what can I do? So a class is simply a definition of instance variables, which is basically data, right? The state of the object when you create an object of the class, and what can I do? So it's just a definition. To use that definition, you go and instantiate the class. You create an object of that class. The object is the real entity that you can work with. So as soon as I have a car and then I start saying my car. So as soon as you say, oh, my car, oh, I know what she's talking about, right? So what do you do? When you create an object, you give certain values to the instance variables. Make will have a value, model will have a value, and maybe whatever, color may have a value. So those values become real. It becomes a real object. It becomes a real entity. Class was just a definition, right? It just said, oh, there will be a make, there will be a color. But what will be the value of make and the value of color is what comes into when you create a real object. And all objects share methods, and it says, this is what this object can do. Right? So all cars will share the same method. That's the concept. If you can get your head around the concept of how you create a class definition, I think you will be okay, right? So let's give it a try. But last week, all I had done was I had said that I would. Do you think I have the right one? No, I don't, right? Because this has things missing. I think this was the one we were working on. Yeah, we had written much more. So last week I said I won't go into basically kind of packaging like we do in an object-oriented language. I won't package my code like that. I'll just write a straight-on program in which I'll write a main method, and anything that you write in a main method of the Java class definition, it automatically gets executed. That's just how it is. The default method that automatically gets executed when you run a Java program is the main method. So if you write Java code and it has no main method, nothing runs, nothing executes, okay? So basically we will learn how to write definitions, and then we will learn how to write the drivers or the testers to use that definition. And that's the program that we will run, okay? So let me quickly go through what we were doing last week so that you can kind of get back in the thick of things. I would really appreciate, and it will help you too, before you come to class, just give it, an hour or so, half hour will do, to see what kind of see what you did the last week. And that way, when you come to class and I am revising something, or I'm just saying, okay, let's look at through quickly, you know what I'm talking about. Believe me, it will help. You won't take much time, 15 minutes maybe. Just kind of look at the example we were working on the week before, and that way, when you come back, it's not all Greek to you. Okay, so you have to work hard. Remember, you promised you would work hard, because we are trying to learn what we learned last semester, relearn that, and also to learn new concepts. So we have two jobs. So basically more work to do, but that more work will have to come from you. I'll try my best to do small examples, short examples first, and then when I think you get it, then I'll go to more complicated examples, but I'll have to do a lot. And so you have to help me out with it. Okay, so we were writing a straight on program that was not object oriented in its structure. I'm basically using a straight on procedural programming paradigm example, right? So procedural programming just said, okay, just let me know the procedure. What do you want to do? And I'll do it for you. That's what I'm trying to do in this example. So please remember these new comments that you learned in Java that maybe you had never used before were the Java doc comments, right? They start with the slash and a double star and end with the star and a slash. These annotations that you see here, at author, at version, at since, these are all kind of predefined. You cannot change them in the sense, you can't even change their spellings. You can't say authors if there is more than one. And what these Java doc comments do is when you run the Java doc utility, it creates Java documentation for you, the documentation that you see in the Java library. And please remember, appreciate it, how much you have there. And if it was not there, how would you use all those classes? So you as a programmer, when you create classes and you want other users to use your classes, this is the only way they'll know how to use it. It's like a manual, right? It's a manual. If you don't tell them how to use it, what will they do? Hit and trial and then not satisfied, and then there goes your class. Nobody's going to use your class. So this is a must in all your programs. It will always have marks, always, because that's the only way I can force you to do it, right? But make it a habit. Make it a habit. And I'll be using Java documentation more than I will be using regular comments. So regular comments come in two flavors. You've seen the double slash for line comments, and you've seen the block comments in slash and star and slash enclosed in these two. So Java documentation is new for you, I think, and I'll emphasize a lot on it. So I'll always have Java documentation in my code. So the one in this example is kind of limited to this that you see at the head. But as you write more and more, as you start writing class definitions, you will see they just are available and you should be using them. So remember, I said Java library is grouped. You have packages in the Java library, in the Java API. There are packages, and each package is basically a collection of classes. So the package that you automatically is imported into your code, a package that you can use by default in your program, is the java.lang package. So if you notice, there is a yellow squiggly here and it says the import Java is never used. Maybe I never used it in my code, and that's why it's saying it's a warning. I mean, it sits there, but it is not useful at all. So you're basically saying I'll be using this package. Also, I have included another package called javax.swing. The name of the package is javax.swing, and on the left hand side, if I open up my project, you will notice that this program is sitting in a default package, which doesn't have a name. It is called default package. It is sitting in the default package. So from next class onwards, the next example onwards, we will learn how to create our own packages also. Because again, what is package? Organization, right? So you create a package, you put related classes inside it, and then of course you can jar it. Jars are basically zip files, right? Java archive files. You can jar it, and there you can distribute your application. And of course, people use it. Okay, so I will learn from the next example. I'll show you how to create a package. So these packages are already created for you. Packages are nothing but groups of related classes. So java.lang is a package that is automatically included in your code. You can use it. A common class that you have been using from this package is the string class, right? It's a class that sits in this package. System class for system out println, it also sits in this. Does it? Does it sit in this package? We can always check. Okay, so all you have to do is go to the documentation, look at the package and see. I'm hoping, yeah, I think it should, because you just say you just use it without importing any package. But anytime you use a class from another package, you will have to import that package. And again, you could say import javax.swing.star. Star means just import all the classes in that package. Or I don't know, I like this way where I kind of define which class I'm going to work with. If I'm only going to work with one or couple of some classes from that package, I import it this way. I leave it to you, whatever you like. You can do a dot star if you are feeling lazy, or you say, really, how does it matter? Or you can use the name.
When I put in Java line, it broke my code and I had to take it out.
Shouldn't have. Did you do an import?
Last.
Okay, show it to me, and then I check what's happening. Okay, just put it back for me, and we'll see what's happening. So you should see a warning is all that you must see. It says you're not using it, so why are you importing it? But it should not break your code. Definitely, it should not break your code. Okay, so a class definition in Java, everybody remembers: public class, name of the class, curly opening brackets, and curly closing brackets. So keep this in your mind. The class definition in Java has the word public, usually most of the cases, right? It is public class, because if a class is not public, how will you use it? You can't use it. And there are more specifiers that you can use, like more definitions or directives that you can use, like an abstract class, for example. We'll come to it when we learn inheritance and all that. But right now, we'll keep it simple. So our class is public. Public means shared by everybody, right? That's public. The reserved word class follows it, because now you're giving a class definition. Use Pascal, use Pascal naming conventions to name your class. Just think that it is almost a rule, right? So this is Pascal naming convention. The Pascal is different from camel case convention because the first letter of the first word is also capitalized. So this is the convention of naming a class in Java. Start with an opening bracket and end with a closing bracket. There, that's how you define a program in Java. That's where you enclose your code. It's just how it is. That's the syntax, right? So this is the syntax you have to be familiar with. When we learn more, we'll talk about more that can go with these signatures. These are called the signatures, okay? Okay, now inside a class, generally will come instance variables. Basically, how do I look, right? The class says, this is how I look. If you give values to this instance variables, that tells you my state, okay? And remember, the class is just a definition. You start creating objects of the class to use that class, and then methods. So what can I do and how do I look is what defines an object, right? It's for everybody. We say person, and with person we can say something like height, weight, gender, and so on, right? These are all definitions that you give with the person. As soon as I say something like Chelsea, height, weight, gender will all have values. So there is a state of an object. As soon as I say Anju, again, there will be some value for height, some value for weight, some value for gender. And so for each one of us. Each one of us is a person. So every object has its own instance variables. Therefore, they're called instance variables. They belong to an instance. An object is an instance of a class, right? So each object has values for instance variables that can differ. May or may not differ, but will differ usually. And then all of us persons can do some jobs. We can sit, we can stand, we can eat, we can sleep, things like that. And that's all common to us. We can all do it, right? So Chelsea.sleep, Chelsea goes off to sleep. Anju.teach, Anju goes to teach, right? So these are the methods. That's how it works. That's all it is. Basically nothing. So if I tell you to create a class definition or write an application that does something, the first job you have to do is, okay, how do I represent this class? What are the instance variables, or how do I define this class? How do I represent this class? Think of it, whatever helps you, right? So how do I look? That's the first thing you have to define. Or what do I need for this class to work becomes its instance variables. And then what can it do becomes its methods. That's the two things that you have to do. So data and methods capsulated together in a capsule. There, where you write them doesn't matter. Shake, 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 and it becomes your class definition. Remember that property, encapsulation of object-oriented program, right? So you try to hide your data, therefore you try to make your instance variables private, and you try to make your methods public. So how I look is the object's own property. But what can I do? It is important that you tell me what to do so they are public. Okay, so that's data hiding. So we'll talk about it as we go on, but you should have this picture clear in your mind so that when I do something, you can exactly link, oh, she's talking about instance variables. Now this is a method, and so on and so forth. For the first program, we kind of kept it simple. I didn't use the class definition as per se. I just said, okay, just let me write code and show you that how it works, because the aim here was to show you the dialog boxes class. So I just wrote the main method in it. The property of the main method in a Java class definition is, if there is a main method and I say run my code, of course, after I compile it, if I say run my code, it takes the main method, starts with the opening bracket of the main method, does everything you write in the main method, finishes when it sees the closing bracket, and its job is done. That's what it does. So what I'm writing here is not object-oriented at all. I'm just writing a clean top to bottom program that is just showing you a few things. And those few things you may have seen before or you may have not seen before. So that's the aim. Okay, so let's try. So repeat, shall I repeat what the signatures of main mean? Public. Come with me, public. What does public mean? Ben, what does public mean in a main method? What does this specifier tell you? Okay, try public, English word public. Open to all, right? Private is belongs to me, public means open to all. Okay, so basically main method says I'm open to all. Like anybody can use me. Okay, static. Static. Neerav.
Access by all.
Access by all, again sharing, more of a share. Then you'll say, what is the difference between public and static? There is a little difference. There is a little difference because public is an access specifier and static also tells you about where it can be used, but it is sharing. But the other important thing is it belongs to the class. It's a class method, right? So I don't have to create, I told you class is just a definition. It's, if you don't create objects out of it, it is of no use. It just sits there. It's like a blueprint, right? But a class method can be used with the class name. It belongs to the class and all the objects of that class can share it. So it's not public in the sense anybody can use it. It can be used by any of the objects of the class, kind of, right? Or basically, in a sense, yeah, anybody can use it with the class name. In a sense, it's the same thing. But static is more. Think of it in another way. One definition is absolutely right, what Neerav said. Sharing can be used, shared by, because it belongs to a class, then anybody can use it, right? But two, of course, objects of that class can use it, but anybody can use it. Second thing you have to remember, something important. A static method can be used with a class name, should be used with the class name. So you should be saying class name dot name of the method instead of object name dot the name of the method. You can do that, but why? I mean, when you can use it with the class, why will you use it? Why should you create an object and use it? So why is main static? So that when I tell the Java runtime unit to run my program, it says, oh, main can be shared, it can be used, it belongs to the class called dialog boxes. So all I have to say is dialog boxes.main and there it goes. I don't have to create an object of it. And that's perfectly fine. That's why main is static. What about the return type void? Rutul, what about?
It doesn't return anything.
It doesn't return anything. Nothing doesn't mean return nothing. It returns nothing. It doesn't give you an answer back. Actually, it does give an answer back to the Java runtime unit saying I've exited with a code of 0 if it is successful or with 1. But that's not only from main. I think it's just when the run has finished, it just tells the runtime unit I'm done. 0 code means everything successful. 1 means something went wrong, kind of, right? Or other error codes. So nothing, returns nothing. The name of the method, name, exactly how it is spelled here. Same letter case, everything same. And then in round brackets, what do you see? Justin, what do you see in the round brackets of main? What is that called? What kind of list? Parameter list, right? The parameter list. It's called the parameter list. What is a parameter? What is a parameter? What does it do for a method? What does it give to the method? Some inputs, right? We won't call them variables, some inputs, some values. It gives some values to me. So main can actually take from the, whoever is running the program can take any number of strings from you. How do I say any number? Because what do you see? String, opening brackets, closing brackets. You're defining an array. What is an array? A collection of same data types or same objects. So here is, what is it? A string array. That means any number. And you see these square brackets are empty. So any number, including 0. So you can pass to the main method. When you run the main method, you can actually pass it values, which you've never done before, but I'll tell you how to do it. Sometimes methods main does need parameters to run them, right? So this is called the parameter list. Even if you have nothing, you have to put the opening and the closing bracket with the method signature. You have to, even if the parameter list is empty. What is it signifying here for main? It says main, when it runs, can accept. It can accept any number of strings from the user who's running the code. So I could pass to main maybe my name, but they all have to be strings. I can pass my name to it. Anything that is a string. I could be passing some numbers also, but those numbers have to go as strings. They're all strings. You'll say, what does main do with it? what does a method do with input? Something, right? So instead of asking the user what is your name and maybe what are the two numbers you want to add, you can actually pass them as parameters to me. Then you won't even have to ask the user. So every time when the user runs your code, of course, the user should know that his or her name and some input has to be passed to me. So of course, the user has to know that either way he has to know. So I'll show you today, if I have time, how to pass parameters to the main method, which you have not done, but it can be done. It's just like any other method. So that's the signatures of the main method. Exactly how I've written it is how you have to write it. The only thing you can change is the name of the parameters. ARGS, argument, stands for argument. You can call it anything you like. It's just a name place, a place for all the values that you will give. So the first value that you give it will go into ARGS 0. Remember, arrays have subscripts. The second value that you give it will automatically go into ARGS 1. So this name could be changed by you. So if you were passing no parameters to main, fine, main cannot use it. I mean, it has nothing, it got nothing. It can always check whether something was passed to me. Then the second value you pass to main goes into the secondary element, the third into the third element, and so on and so forth. And this can all be done in programming. I can always check. When I say I mean I'll write code so that main can check, is something coming to me? And if yes, how will I use it? It's all sitting there if you have to use it. Right? So I will, but that's not the aim right now. The aim right now is just to show you how to use the J option pane class. So till now, you've done something like this. You're familiar with this, right? This is how you have been displaying messages on the screen or any output, right? So if you now with Eclipse, things are really nice. If you just put that belongs to the java.lang package. I thought definitely if I'm using it, it has to belong to java.lang. Notice how it says I belong to the java.lang package. Do you notice in the help? The system class contains several useful class fields and methods. It cannot be instantiated. You'll say, oh, a class that cannot be instantiated, I cannot create objects of it. What's the sense of this class? The sense of this class is you can use all the class methods. That means everything in system is static in nature. Everything in the system class, all instance, all variables, all constants, all methods are all static in nature. Therefore, you can use them, right? Straight with class name, system dot and whatever, system dot whatever. So it says this class cannot be instantiated, but you'll say, then what's the sense of this class? The sense of this class is that we can just use it with the class name. So it's a useful class with several useful fields like in and out and dot and so on, which you can use. Anytime you have a doubt of anything, you know what is the best thing? To go to its help and look at it. That's the best. And with Eclipse, it is so easy. It's so easy. You bring your mouse over it, you bring it here. See, it's a final variable. It's a constant. And so is the class. And here are all the methods that are available also with print stream. So I would definitely like you to get into things. What is the system class? What is out doing? What is println doing? Anytime you use anything, try to go and look for its help. If you don't understand it, ask me. That's how you will learn. Okay. Okay. So you've been kind of outputting on the terminal with this statement. You've done it all through semester 1, I think, right? All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it a little prettier. I'm just saying, oh, let me make it a little pretty. Instead of showing hello programmers on the terminal, I'll maybe show it in a message dialog box. So what did I do? I use the J option pane class, which is available in the javax.swing package. So as soon as I use it, I have to import it. Rule number 1. Or I could have actually qualified it here, which becomes very long. javax.swing.joptionPane. I could have written the whole qualification here, but it becomes very messy. I mean, half the time in Java, you're using classes. So why not just import the package? But that is an option. Instead of import, every time you use joptionPane, you can use the first line. Notice how it says javax.swing.joptionPane. Qualify it. Tell it where it belongs. But that's not how it is done in Java. That's not the norm. In classes, packages are imported and classes are used. So if now you remember, I showed you how to work with the show message dialog. A few things in Eclipse, anything that you see in italics is basically a static method, belongs to the class. Notice its signatures right there. Show message dialog is a public method, belongs to the class, is a class method, returns nothing, is called show message dialog, and requires these parameters, a parameter of type component and a parameter of type object. That is one of the methods. If you remember, I mentioned that some methods are overloaded. Same name, same kind of job, but different parameters, right? So it is doing the same job, but the same job is displaying in a message box on the screen, but maybe a little different in the sense title may be different, icon can be different, so on and so forth. So these such methods are called overloaded methods because you're just giving it more, right? Overloaded. They're just overloaded. So same name, same job, different number of parameters. And they differ either in the number of parameters or the sequence. It could happen that string comes first and the component comes afterward. But something has to be different in the parameter list, either the number of parameters or the sequence of parameters or whatever, but something has to be different. So to kind of make it more obvious that show message dialog is going to show a message dialog on the screen, the same method, I've written it in two ways. Look at the first one. The first one just says where will this dialog box appear? My parent component is null, which simply means on my terminal window. When you start doing GUI, you will see that you can create components in a GUI, and components could be panels or whatever, right? Panels and frames and so on. So when you draw something and you kind of draw panels or frames in it, then if you like, you can make your dialog box appear in a particular place, in a particular panel. So panel is just like the English word panel. Suppose I'm drawing something here, I say, okay, I'll kind of divide my screen into maybe 5 parts. So these will become panels or something. There are some layouts which are already defined. This is actually a border layout in Java. You have a north, you have a south, you have an east, a west, and a center. So if you wanted to show your dialog box in the west, you would tell the name of this component to it, and it will show it there. If you wanted to show it in the south, this is where you will say. In the center, this is where you say. You can create your own layouts also, but some layouts are available automatically by default in Java. So basically, a component is simply, it could be a frame, just a frame. It could be a panel in the frame, right? And all you're saying is, where do I want to show my dialog box? So since I'm not drawing anything, there is nothing else, I'm not drawing anything, all I'm using is my own default terminal window. I'm just saying null simply means whatever is the default, just put it on my default window. And my default window, when I run this code using Eclipse, is just my terminal. So that's what null stands for. And the second component that I'm showing here, notice when you brought your mouse over it, it said the second is an object. The message is an object. So the first component says what's the parent component in which I want to show my dialog box. And the second one says, what do you want to show? The object you want to show. So here I want to show a string. Object means any object. See, it's just a generic type, any object. I want to show a string, and that's the message I give. In the second one, I used another show message dialog. In this one, I used another overloaded method. Notice it has 1, 2, 3, 4 input parameters. So it is a public method, static in nature, belongs to the class, can be shared. Public, it's like public, it can be shared by anybody, like any object, any other object can use it. Show message dialog is the name of the method, returns nothing. So void is the return type and requires how many parameters? 4 parameters. First of type component, second of type object, third of type string, and fourth of type int. These are the 4 parameters that it wants to use in this sequence. You can change the sequence, right? So what did you give it? You said the parent component was null. Again, null means default window. The second you said, this is what I want to print. This is the object you are passing it. This is what it will put in the message dialog box. Welcome will go in its title. Bring your mouse back. See, it will tell you. The third is the string title. Notice the third component, string title. This will be the title of your message box. And the fourth says the message type. And if you remember, we went through a few message types last week, where information message was one of them. They're just constants. So we can use constants if we like, but instead of constant values like 1, 2, 3, and so on, the names are better. Information message, error message. There were a few messages like that, right? There were a few constants. They're all constants. They're just constants. Notice its definition. Notice the definition of information message. It's public, static, final. It's a constant. Type is int. Public and static kind of mean the same thing, but there is a fine line between them. Public, private, and protected are access specifiers, and static does tell you about not where it can be accessed, but how it can be accessed, kind of. That's the only difference, a very fine line, but same kind of concept. Final, it is a constant, nobody can change it. And int, that it is an integer, right? So as I said, you could use 0, it has a value of 1. So putting 1 here will do the same job. Instead of j option pane dot information message, you could put the value 1. It will automatically stands for j option dot information message. Remember, we tried that, but this looks much better because it's conveying a meaning. The 1 doesn't convey a meaning, but this conveys a meaning. So run it. So when we executed it last time, so see, this is your out, by default, this is your output window. The hello programmers is just a system.out.println. So which looks neater? The message box looks neater. So what are you doing? You're just creating a pretty output. That's what the J option pane class does, right? That's one of the things the J option class does. It can show output. And notice if I do an OK here or close it, you can do both. But if I do an OK here, the second one will come up. I have 2 of them. And this is the second one. The title is welcome. In the first one, it was message by default. Here it is welcome. The I actually doesn't change. I is also the default icon. Here it was information, so I kind of left it at I, but you could use whatever. And notice how by default, automatically the OK button and the cross buttons are working. I don't have to do anything with them. I don't think you see this on your Windows, right? This is me because back in my office, I have a docking machine. So I have 2 computers, right? My laptop and a desktop. So that's the symbol of move window. Notice move window to the next monitor. So don't worry about this. This is just the software program running on my laptop. You won't see it. It has nothing to do with you. And of course, the cross works and the OK works. So now you see how dialog, what is the difference between a system out println and a J option pane dot show message dialog. Okay. Now, are there other methods available in this class? I'm sure there are. Here, if you do a restore, usually this is where the output window occurs. If you can kind of minimize it and it won't disturb you. Okay. Okay. So now my next thing, can I only show something with J option pane or there are other methods available? Nobody knows out of the blue. I mean, I know just because I've done this before, but what are the various methods available in a class? I mean, nobody can remember it. So always the simplest way, always look for Java help online. Right? So if I'm now interested in the J option pane class, I mean, there are a few things. The easiest would be to do a control F. Oh, there it is. Right, and here notice how find in page I can go to J option pane. I mean, that is one easy way of doing it. It's really easy. Otherwise, I'll keep scrolling through my classes. You could choose a package if you knew one, and then in that package you will see the classes. Or if you know the class you have to use, then just search it on the page. So click on the J option pane, and here is the class. Please notice the hierarchy. The J option pane is inheriting from J component, which is another class, which is inheriting from a class called container, which is further inheriting from the component class. And remember, always at the top is the class java.lang.object. Every class in Java, either directly or indirectly, will always come from the java.object. So the class you are writing, the class that you're writing, J option, the dialog boxes classes that you're writing, its parent is also lang.object. That's what the parent is. So you can use all the classes, all the methods that are available in this object class, you can use it too in your code. And there is a common method that we use all the time. I'm not sure if you've heard of it in your introductory course, the toString method. The toString method, if you would like how to show your object on the screen, the toString method comes handy there. I'll show it to you today, okay? I'll show how to use the toString method. That's coming from the object class. You're just overriding it, giving it a new definition. So here is the J option class. So if I wanted to see what other methods are available, here are the constants we were talking about. Error message, information message, warning message, question message, plain message. Plain message has no icon. No icon will appear for a plain message. Okay, so here are the constants that are defined. This is what I was using in the 4th parameter of show message dialog. Okay, and here are the buttons. The buttons, note by default, what was the only button you saw? the OK button. You can have a default option, which is what you were using, the yes no option, the yes no cancel option, the OK cancel option. So what is it using by default? The default option. If you wanted to have more buttons, yes no cancel and so on, you'll just have to see what is the method to use. So there will be another overloaded method with this extra parameter. That's all there will be, right? So you just have to go through the class to see. So let me tell you what I'm trying to say about that buttons. Here are its fields, right? Here are its instance variables. Here are its fields. Static int, they all belong to the class. The protected basically says this class can use it, and any children classes of this class can use it. So here are here are the constants we were talking about. See, information, message. These are all constants. So therefore you see static int, static with them. And here are the fields that it got from its parents. So anything that belongs to parents, automatically the child can use it. That's what inheritance is. That's what it is all about. Here is the constructor. How do you construct an object of J option pane? We haven't done it, but you can do it. And then the show message dialog method that we were using. Show. We said show message dialog. Input. We'll use input also. Oh, here is some input. See? So is there a way to take input through the J option pane? I see some methods called show input dialog. Show input dialog. That means there is a way of taking input from the user. So if I can show output, can I take input? And this is the method we'll just use. But the show message dialog, that the one that you just used, if there is another option of here, we've used this one, we've used this one. Let's see this one. There's another one. What is the extra one in it? Icon. What does the icon do? Oh, no. An icon to display in the dialog that helps the user to identify. So the buttons that I was talking about, you can only create them by using the constructor, I think. When you create the constructor, you go new J option pane. There is where you can say what kind of buttons I want to show. Because this icon is simply an icon to display in the dialog that helps the user identify the kind of message that is being displayed. Same kind of this thing. Icon will just let you use your own icon. That's the difference. Okay, so it's not here where you can use the buttons thing. Okay, so let's get back here, what we were doing. Now, let's use this now. Let's see. If I was able to show a message, so here, let's put a comment. Display messages in dialog box. Right, we've done this. So I just showed this to you so that, just kind of showing you the difference. What have you used before to ask a user's name if you had to? If you wanted to take input from the user, what have you used before? The scanner class. To which package does it belong? Util, the Java. So you had to import the java.util. You had to create a scanner object, and then you would ask for the name of the person, right? So everybody familiar with that? Everybody okay with that? All you have to do is scanner object and use the method which basically is asking for a string and use it. Now let's see, how do you do the same thing using a J option pane? Okay, so let's go ahead. J option pane, name of the class, right? I want you to ask the input of the user, but pretty, just in a dialog box. Okay, so if you notice, we had seen a method. Of course, you may not remember the name, but we had seen a method, and that method was called something like show input. Let's try. If you don't remember, give it a try. There it is, show input dialog, and notice it is again a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 overloaded methods. 6 overloaded methods. Do you see? The first one is only showing a message on the screen. So what is your name will be your message, right? The second one, a parent component and a message, allows you to show your dialog box in a particular place, in a particular component. The third one has a message and an initial selection value. So that means by default, some value can be selected. I'm kind of guessing. I have to click on it to find out the real meaning of each parameter, and so on and so forth. That's what I'm guessing, initial selection value, right? And then again, more to go and so on. There's no end to it. So let's try. So show. Okay, that was my method, right? Okay, I haven't completed it. Sometimes it becomes irritating. Why is it saying something? Because I haven't yet completed it. Okay, so you can try whatever you like. We'll start with a simple one. Okay, so let's see what I can do a simple one. Maybe just ask a question of you. That's the easiest one. Remember, that's the first one we saw. That's only the one that had message. So by default, there will be something in the title bar, I'm sure. Input. I think input is what appears in the title bar. I think there is a question mark icon automatically that appears in a dialog box. You'll say, good. That shows a question, but if I give an answer, what does it do with the answer? Let's look at it first, and then you can give me the answer, right? So this should show, notice name of the class, it has gone italics. So that means it is a static method. And I'm using this simple one. It returns a string value. So here is something that you haven't yet done in this code. It is returning a value. So if a value is returned by a method, what should you do with it? You should be able to catch it. So if somebody is throwing a ball at you, you have to catch it. So if this method is returning a value to me, I should catch it. And how do you catch values in Java? Assign it to a variable. What? Now, does the return value make sense to you? Right? This method was, return type was void. It wasn't giving anything back to me. So I didn't have to catch it. But this method is returning a string back to me. So if it is returning a string, I have to put it in a string. I've already defined name. Here, do you remember I defined it last week? There it is, name. You notice the string variable? String object, I should call it. We call string variables, but they are basically objects, right? So I caught it. You have to put it in the right kind of object. If the method is returning an int, you have to put it in an int box. If the method is returning a string, you have to put it in a string box. Another important use of strict languages. You have to know the return type, right? If you know the return type, you have to put it in the right box. You can put this in number one. You can do it. Number one is a float. You can put this in number one. It will give you an error. It will show you an error. You'll see the red squiggly saying, what are you trying to do? It is returning a string value. So to use a method, you have to know what does it give back to you. Of course, you have to know what does it do. Otherwise, how will you use it, right? And then what does it give back? If it returns you nothing, void, then you don't have to do anything. Here also, you don't have to do this. But then you haven't saved the value anywhere. You haven't caught the ball. The ball is gone. So what was the use of calling the method then, right? So this is not wrong, but this is useless. It won't give you a syntax error. It said, I gave you an answer. You didn't save it anywhere. So that's up to you. So it's not a syntax error, but it's kind of a silly logical error. If you don't, you're asking my name, I gave you my name, and then you don't even pay attention. How rude is that, kind of, right? So when you take input from the user, you need to take the output from that method, take what it returns to you, and save it somewhere if you need to use it. And if you didn't want to use it, why did you ask it in the first place is the big question. Right? So therefore, I had initialized it to name because I know that show input dialog is returning a string. And I just don't know. I know because of its signatures. Notice how in the signature, do you see its return type? String. So since it is returning a string value, please initialize a string variable to the value. Now, automatically, this, whatever you return to me, will go here. Do you want to show it? Let's show it. You've already learned how to show it. Let me show it to prove. Okay, so show message dialog. You know how to concatenate strings, right? What do you use for concatenating? If I wanted to say welcome and then I want to show the name of the person. Plus, very good. So we'll put a blank here, a plus, and the name of the variable, which is name here. This is what will show the message on the screen. Not on the screen, sorry, on another dialog box. If you wanted to show it on this on your default terminal window, you would say system.out.println. So if this works, I've proved that I have saved the value somewhere, right? So this is the one I've used. You could have used any of the other options. I'm kind of leaving it to you. You could have used the one with 2, 3, like anything. Maybe that's your job. I'll give that job for you to research a little and do it in your assignment. Okay, so let's try this now. So programming is fun is coming from show dialog, right? If I close it, the second one comes. If I do an OK, the third one comes. Here is your input dialog box. Do you notice a few default things? Input. A title by default is input. You can always change it. So there has to be a method show input dialog, which will take one of the parameters that you will give as title. Do you see the message here, the icon here, the question mark? You could change it, though I don't know, like question, since you're asking a question, this is the best one, but you could change it if you want, right? And notice this is your message, the message that you gave to show in your dialog box. And this is a default text box that is coming for you. Notice the two buttons, OK and cancel. If you do an OK, it is accepting it. If you are doing a cancel, it is ignoring it. The thing to remember is simply this. Even if you put a number here, it is converted into a string and returned back. So any input that you're giving in a dialog box is assumed to be a string. So if you have to add two numbers and you want the two numbers from the user, it's your job to take the number, it is a string, convert it into a number, and then use it. Even if you give it a number, this is a 23 as a string, excuse me, that is being taken by the dialog box. That's what it returns. 23 string, not 23 as a number. It doesn't. So let me try to be, let me try to give an answer which makes sense. So I'm saying that's my name and I do an OK. Cancel is different. Cancel, welcome null, because when you do a cancel, you didn't give it, I mean, you basically said ignore. So ignore C is undefined. You're trying to show name and name is undefined because nothing went into it. See, this is an undefined object. There is a difference between an undefined object and an empty object. I could have put a blank there and my name would then have been blank. But now it says welcome null, which doesn't make sense, but that's what I told it to do. That's exactly what I said. Remember, these dumb machines, we tell them what to do. So if I say Anju and I say, okay, accept it, there it says welcome Anju. Job done? Right? So you could, I've used the simple one. I think there were 6 when we counted. You can use anything you like. You can change the title. You can change the icon that comes. I'm kind of thinking, why do they have two options? One with that information, which pictures, or maybe if you don't want to use it and you want to use some other icon, then you can use your own icons. That should be it, because those are restricted. You have information message, warning message, error message, no message, plain message, right? So since those are the only options, if you wanted to show some other icon for whatever reason, then you have that icon option to work on, right? So again, I leave it to you because I'm going to ask you to do it. So here is, you've asked the user's name and then you have shown it on the screen. Now let's kind of make a small interactive calculator, right? I mean, I could do many things with it, but I'm just adding the two numbers. I could ask the user also, do you want to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and so on. I mean, you can make a program as simple as saying hello silly, and you can make a program as sophisticated as touch of the mouse and things happen. Like, it could be anything. So start small and then grow big is what you do in programming. And of course, these 3 courses will not make you go there, but somewhere from here, you can at least go here, right? That's the aim. I mean, it's not possible to do everything in 3 courses. It is not, even though we try our best. Okay, now let's see. How do I add 2 numbers? So let's make an interactive calculator, but very silly calculator. Okay, so I want to ask for the first number. I want to ask for the second number. Then I want to just add them. Looks so simple, right? So let's ask for the first number. Let's ask for the second number. We have the 2 numbers and then just add them like we would do normally. Okay, so instead of saying scanner.nextInt, getting an int, I'm going to ask in a dialog box, right? So if you were using the scanner object, you would say in like whatever your scanner object dot nextInt, and you can ask for an integer. You're expecting an integer from the user. Okay, so let's try. I'm going to take, I think I defined 2 numbers here. I think I did. Floating. I have 2 float numbers. I have an age also, actually. I could be asking age also. So if I just wanted to use age to show, it was fine. But as soon as I start doing math with it, you will see a problem. Okay, so let's take the number 1 and number 2. So I'm going to take this number. I'm going to show the dialog, show the dialog box. And I'm going to say, please input number 1. Before this, you could always say, now creating a simple calculator, something like this. I mean, it's always better. Always keep in mind that the users should exactly know what is happening. Let's bring our mouse over it. It says, I cannot convert a string to a float. I told you, the J option pane show input dialog box returns a string. You can give it to a floating point number. How do you convert a string into a floating point number in Java?
Integer.parsing.
Okay, so integer.parseInt is for integers. So for floats, it will be
Integer.
float.parse float, right? Okay, so how does Nirav know? He must have used it. He must have used it before. Like he doesn't know just out of heck of it. You cannot. It's like a dictionary. Do you know all the words that appear in a dictionary? No, you don't. It's the same thing with Java API. You don't know everything that occurs, but you can always find out. You'll say how? Google it. What else? All you have to say is convert string to float. You have to know what you have to do, right? Otherwise, how will you ask a question? You have to know what word are you searching for in the dictionary. You can't start from the first page of the dictionary and start. That's what. So if I want to convert a string into float, that's what I'm trying to do because that's what my number 1 is. Nirav came up with saying, just convert it using a method. So since he's told me a method, I'm going to give it a go. I think he is right. Here. Notice on the left-hand side, parse float is a public static method, belongs to the class. Therefore, I'm using it with the class called float. Float dot. It belongs to the class. It is a static method. It belongs to the class. Usually, that's why I said there's this fine line between saying that static is same as public. Static is more in Java. We say static is a class method, right? It returns a float. Notice it returns a float. And what does it take as an input? A string value. So it takes a string and it converts it into a float and gives it back to you. So what kind of parameter does it need? What kind of parameter does it need? The J option pane is returning a string. You can put it straight inside it, right? So let's try. So put this inside brackets. That becomes the parameter. Kind of think of it. Let's look at it. Do you understand I'm using the float class? Yes. Which method I am using? Oops. Which method am I using? Parse float. How many parameters does the parse float method need? 1. What is the type of parameter it needs? String. You'll say, how come is this a string? Yeah, we know it is a string. Remember, we already talked about it. We said show input dialog returns a string. You could have done this in 2 steps. If you were small, if you were learning Java for the first time, I would say, okay, first take the value, put it in a string variable, then take the string variable and convert it into float. But I mean, if this is fine for you guys, I'll stick to this. If not, we can first take what the show input dialog gives me, put it in a string variable, and then use that string variable here and then convert it into float. Comes back to the same thing. 2 statements combined into 1. Are you all comfortable with this? Or do you want to go stepwise? Come on, you have to say there's nothing wrong in it. Do you want to go stepwise, 1 by 1, or do you understand what I'm doing? How many of you understand what I'm doing? I think we are okay. Are you okay? Don't feel shy, guys. There's nothing to be shy of. If things are difficult, you have to sort them out. There's nothing wrong in it. It's better to get it right. So all I've done here is I've used the parse float method of the float class to convert a string into a floating point number. That's all I've done. So what's coming here? The parameter list. The parameter list, it needed 1 parameter of type string. That's all it needed. And this is a string. I'll put it in a different line so that you can see for a minute. This is a string. J option pane dot show input dialog enter number 1 is returning a string. We know it here. It returns a string. It needed a string. I gave it a string. And this is what you're inputting in that input box. If you input Anju there, of course, this is going to give you a runtime error, because during run, it said, give me a number, and you gave Anju. Anju cannot be converted into a number. So it will bark, right? It will come out. It will say, what are you trying to do? You can fool it, but you know how to take care of it. Okay. So there is my number 1. So do you want to try? Let's see. Just for the heck of it, again, I'll just kind of system out println so that I can show it to you. Let's just show number 1 on the screen. Always with the heading, otherwise makes no sense, right? What did we call it? Number 1. Just so that just to show you. Okay, let's give it a try. Programming is fun. Welcome, programmers. What is your name? Now, welcome, Anju. Enter number 1. Now, a common user who knows what to do will enter a number here. But what if you enter? It is going to come up with a runtime error. It's a runtime error, and this runtime error is called number format exception. Trying to convert AA into a float. Is it possible? No. So this is a number format exception. So the system said, I can do it for you. You will say, oh, that looks untidy. Shouldn't you have taken care of it in your code? I should have. I will. With due time, I will. I don't want to see any of these red error messages. You will learn how to take care of them and give a pretty message on the screen. This is not a number. And let the user try again, maybe. Right? But we don't want to see this. No user wants to see this because it doesn't make any sense at all. So before you float out your code into the market, before your application becomes live, it should be perfect. Perfect means perfect. You've written defensive programming. All exceptions have been handled. Any user of any mentality, if he or she works with your application, should not come up with a dead end. There should be a solution for everybody. That's how good programs should be. That's what you have to learn. And this is just the beginning, right? So I made an error. Of course, I made an error because I did it. Okay, so let's go fine. Okay, so let's give it a number. It's a floating point number. Anything that you give will be converted into a floating number. Keep in mind, right? And numbers can be either positive or negative or anything. Nothing stops you. I'm going to give it 12 just for the heck of it. Notice how it is converted into a float because you said convert it into a float and put it. 12.0 is what comes. Make sense? So it works. The only thing you had to remember was how do I convert it into a float? And why do I convert it into a float? Why is she doing this? Because the show input dialog's return type is string. Whatever you give to it is assumed to be a string. If you have to use it as a number, convert it into a number. Yes?
Is it not a different method for like taking numbers?
No, that's its default. So this is how you will get around it. So like scanner, there is no next in, next double, next float. No, here it's a string. Okay, so that's what we did. So if you can do this, try the other one now. Ask for the second number. Put it in number 2. Don't put it in the same box. If you're going to put everything in the same box, they're gone. You need to put things in different boxes so then you can use them. And you have to put them in boxes because how will you use them? They have to have a name in memory. So that's the use. You have to give your variables names because you can't call them by their memory addresses. You can do that. Like, how can you do that? If you wanted to do that, then go and write machine code, right? Because you're using high-level languages. You don't want to mess up with memory addresses. That's not your job. You're a high-level programmer. So you use variable names and you use types so that you get the right box. You want to save a number. You want to put water and you're asking for a shoebox. You want to put shoes and you're asking for a tumbler. Like, silly. So the right box, the right type, the right size, the right assignment is all necessary. And who has to do it? The programmer. You are writing the code. It's your job. Okay. So there is number 2. So it will ask for number 1. It will ask for number 2. Now your job is to add these 2 numbers and show it on the screen. So if you like, we could have done it, or we'll just create another. I mean, you can create variables on the fly. Nobody stops you. But I would prefer that you put all your variables at, I'm not using this just, it's an int. I had to use integer dot parse int if I wanted to convert a string into int. So you have to know how to convert a string into a number. Integer, double, float, everything is available. Long, short, they all have their parses. They're all parse methods. I haven't used it, you can comment it out. Okay, so now what did I declare? Answer. Okay, now all you have to do is this. You can do the math right away in the dialog box, or you can do this. And we'll do a J option pane dot show dialog or show, what was it? Message dialog. You can go with the easiest one, just makes your life a little easy. And keep in mind, just showing something on the screen is useless, like just showing the answer. Let me show you. Why am I saying it is useless? Okay, so what will appear on the screen is the answer, which answer is nothing but number 1 plus number 2. Let me run it for you. And you tell me what do you think can be improved. Maybe I should comment this all out. Okay. I can do a negative number. Nothing stops me here. Now, how much sense does that make? A number on the screen. Is that your age? Doesn't look like. Weight? No. Is it telling you the temperature outside? I don't think so. Gives you no information. How good is that output? Useless. -11 could be the temperature outside. -11 could be, what else could be negative? Can be age, can be anything. Could be the sum of two numbers. Could be the product of two numbers. I don't know, I have no clue. So output has also to always to be shown with proper messages. Take input with proper messages, show output with proper messages. If you hadn't said what's your name and the dialog box had appeared on the screen, would it have made any sense to me? No. So inputs should have proper prompts, outputs should have proper messages. How will you make it proper? Not a big job at all. What will you do? You can create, if you really want to, you can create a message here. Remember, we had a message variable. You can actually make it pretty, format it. Do you know how to format a message? String.format. Familiar with how to format numbers and everything in Java? Yes or no? Yes. Couple. Okay, let's try this then. Okay, let's try this. I'm creating a string variable. It's like system.out.printf. Have you heard of that? The printf method? So, okay, it's similar to that. It just formats a string. Okay, so string.format. Notice how as soon as I do it, I can see its signatures. So it helps. It wants a string format from you and the object you want to format. That's what it is saying. So let's try. It's a static method, is called format, belongs to the string class. Okay. I'm just kind of making it pretty, that's all. Okay, so what have you used in printfs? %f, you've used %f in printfs, right? Okay. It's a floating point number. Let me complete it and then you can ask me questions, okay? Let me put it in a different line so that you can see, but that's all I can do. Okay, so what do you want to show? Number 1, number 2. And again, if I get stuck, if I'm not using the method properly, I'll just go and check what am I doing wrong? That's all. Oh, sorry. Let's see, what did I do? I kind of, something is not right. Oh, forgot my semicolon. So what did I do? I took the, okay, so let's look at it. String is the class. You are all familiar with the string class. Format is a method that formats a string. What is format? English word format. Pretty. Formats something, right? Makes it look pretty. Okay, so what is the string I'm formatting? The sum of, I've given a format specifier here. This is called a format specifier. %.2f says, replace, how many do you see here? 1, 2, and 3. You can use percentage. There are %f, %s, %i for different types. I'm using f for float. There are 3 format specifiers in my message. And there are 3 outputs I want to show. This is what happens. Number 1 replaces the first one. Number 2, the second one. Answer, the third one. 3 format specifiers, 3 outputs to be shown, match 1 to 1. Number 1 will show as a floating point number with 2 places after decimal. Number 2 will show as a floating point number with 2 places after decimal. And answer will show as a 2 places after decimal. It's just like a printf, but I'm creating a string because I wanted to show a string here. And then all I say is show this string in the message box. I could have written the whole thing that I've written there. I could have done it here. It just makes it neater and less messier. Make sense? You could have written the whole thing, the sum of this. I mean, the whole statement there could have come here. I just formatted it first and then wrote it step by step, just because this is more messy than the first one. The first one was obvious. It was returning a string. I put it in a string. Here it is a little more big and it comes messy. So put it in a format and then show it on the screen. Make sense? Any questions on string.format? It's very similar to system.out.printf. You could have done the same thing in system.out.printf. Try it. What's the big deal? Try it. Because you're familiar with it. So try to relate with what you know. Maybe that will help. So I'll take this thing that you see here till the semicolon and put it here. Oh. Didn't I do a control C? I thought I did. Control C. Control V. Okay, there. Does that look familiar? Have you done this? Have you done this in your first course? System.out.printf, put on the screen, format your print, and this is what you're showing on the screen. Yes. All I did was, everybody familiar with this?
Sure.
Sure, okay. What all I did was, I kind of took this string and formatted it. Now I don't want to use the printf to show it. I just want to create a string out of this, and then I show the string using the dialog box. So I did the same thing. I know how to do it using the string class. I said string.format, create a string, format it, put it in the string variable called message, and then show it on this. That's all I did. So if you know how to do a printf, see, and I know the format returns a string. Notice it returns a string. So I know it returns a string, therefore I put it in a string variable. And I know what it does. It actually returns a formatted string using the specified format strings and argument. That's all. So can you make the relation now? What I did here, I just kind of formatted the string. And I mean, I could have done it here. I could have done a copy paste here, right here, but this is just neater. This is just neater. And run it again. Okay, so let's try to give some numbers. Of course, we've already tested. If you don't give numbers, you get a runtime error. We'll learn how to do that too. No worries. Okay, so notice whatever you see here, you're seeing here. So printf puts it on the screen. I formatted it and then I showed it in a message. Why is formatting necessary? Because how things look is very important. It is. There is a design aspect in the programming world too. You're not designers, you're not web designers or web developers, but at least me. And now it exactly tells me, I know that's not the temperature outside. I know that's not the weight of some person. I exactly know that the sum of 12 and 34 is 46. My answer is completely clear. And that's what I expect from you guys. I'm not going to guess what you're telling me. I want to know what you're telling me. So when you ask for input, clear prompt messages. When you're showing me output, clear messages. I don't want to see 46 on the screen. Makes no sense to me. I don't want to see a question mark on the screen. Makes no sense to me. Ask and I'll tell you. Tell me what the answer is and I'll give you marks. As simple as that. Right? Right, so we use the JOption pane class. Oh, sorry. Yes, we use the JOption pane class in a main method just because I wanted to show it to you because my first review was based on this. But now I have to kind of do something else with you because I'm hearing that you need a little more practice and then I'll give you your first assignment, right? So I just did this because I thought you know how to create classes and everything. That was not the aim. This was just introducing you to JOption and then I could combine the review with this and give your assignment one. I'll kind of back out of it for today for sure because now my aim is now to show you how to write a class definition in Java. That's what I want to do, right? So that I can give you that little boost, and then maybe if you've forgotten, things will come back to you. If things were not clear, you can ask and I'll answer it. Right? That takes care of what I needed to do, at least in this one. And again, I haven't finished the whole thing. There were so many more things I could have done. I could have used a overloaded method of show input dialog. I could have done different things, like, but I kind of, this is my introduction to you. The rest I'll ask you in the assignment. So you go and look for overloaded methods. You say how to change icons, and you do extra work yourself. Okay, I've put you on track. You have to kind of take a few gallops yourself. Okay, so that takes, okay, so we'll take a break. Did we start at 12? Yeah, we started at 12. Okay, we'll take a break. 20 minutes break, come back, and we'll do our second example in class today. Okay?